It begins not with a scream or a monster leaping from the shadows, but with a question. How does a story built on childhood end when its cast is no longer made of children? Stranger Things Season 5 arrives like a time machine that skipped a few years too far, catching its heroes fully grown, yet still clinging to the spirit that once made them legendary. Fans wondered if the magic would survive, now that the BMX bikes, awkward voices, and basement conspiracies are things of the past. Surprisingly, the show doesn't pretend the kids are kids anymore. It embraces their age by shrinking the world around them, locking the story back inside Hawkins, and forcing the characters to fight on familiar ground. Gone are the crowds, the nosy parents, the high school halls. What remains is a hauntingly empty town and the return of Vecna, a nightmare waiting in the Upside Down. By narrowing its focus, the season becomes a sprawling 5-hour movie split into 4 grand chapters, with more coming later in the holidays. The pacing is deliberate, almost luxurious, allowing every chase, every whisper, and every trap to linger in smoky suspense. Episode 1 feels like a slow heartbeat before battle, but Episode 4 erupts into a storm of blazing spectacle, complete with flamethrowers, bullets, and an effects budget so extravagant it almost mocks gravity. It's old-school adventure filmmaking blended with emotional storytelling, where thrill isn't just noise, but payoff. The visual influences are clear. Home Alone, Jurassic Park, The Great Escape. Yet the show now references itself most of all, as if Stranger Things has become its own mythology. The characters move through this world like echoes of who they once were. Dustin is still the overexcited strategist. Eleven remains the troubled weapon, and Mike pushes forward with stubborn loyalty, even when logic gives up. Lucas and Jonathan continue as loyal shadows, not driving the plot, but grounding it with familiar faces. Meanwhile, Joyce and Hopper, the parental anchors, remain tough, bruised, and necessary. These personalities feel frozen in time, as if adulthood hasn't rewritten them completely. The show doesn't try to reinvent its heroes, and oddly, that becomes its strength. Familiarity lets the audience reconnect instantly, but it also highlights how nostalgia itself is now the engine. It's not just a story of survival anymore. It's a story about refusing to let go. Yet something deeper pulses beneath the fireworks. Nancy steps into the spotlight with a fire that's been building for seasons, and Will finally emerges from the emotional fog that once defined him. His arc, subtle, sensitive, aching, becomes the emotional spine of the season. The Duffers don't treat his story as a simple coming-of-age reveal. Instead, they weave it into the heart of the show, transforming him from a symbol of trauma into a symbol of identity, courage, and connection. It feels like Stranger Things is saying goodbye, not to innocence, but to fear. This isn't just a finale. It's a farewell to childhood itself, delivered with bullets, nostalgia, laughter, and one last heroic scream. As the chaos builds, Hawkins becomes a battlefield stripped of all distractions. No busy streets, no curious neighbors, no bustling schools. Only the echo of memories and the distant hum of something monstrous. The Upside Down looms closer than ever, not just as a dimension, but as a reflection of everything the characters have been avoiding. Vecna, no longer a symbol of adolescent fear, evolves into a reminder that the past will always claw its way back unless confronted directly. The show cleverly tightens its geography to expand its emotions. By confining the action, it magnifies every risk, every sacrifice, every tremor of tension. The stakes don't just feel bigger, they feel unavoidable. Hawkins isn't being attacked anymore. Hawkins is the battleground of who these characters are becoming. The emotional weight doesn't slow the adventure, it sharpens it. Every scene where the gang huddles over a radio, arguing breathlessly, every desperate sprint through tunnels, every brave decision made without thinking twice, becomes a reminder of how far they've come. The comedy remains intact through Dustin's chaotic genius and Robin's unfiltered observations. But the laughter has more purpose now. It breaks open moments heavy with dread and gives characters room to be human. 11, still burdened by guilt, begins to understand that strength isn't just force, it's self-acceptance. Hopper, scarred but unbroken, represents survival. Joyce, fierce as ever, becomes the show's living conscience. Together, they aren't trying to save Hawkins anymore. They're fighting to protect the last pieces of who they used to be. The season also explores how time changes heroes even when their personalities stay the same. The group's loyalty feels heavier, like a promise they're fulfilling out of necessity rather than youthful idealism. No one is having fun anymore. No one is innocent. The adventure that once felt like a game has finally grown teeth. The danger is real, the consequences permanent, and the show makes sure we understand that childhood escapism has turned into real-world courage. Characters who once used slingshots now rely on firepower. Plans once scribbled with crayons now involve genuine strategy. Stranger Things acknowledges that its charm has shifted from playful nostalgia to emotional maturity, and it embraces that transformation instead of pretending otherwise. The season's most powerful surprise isn't a monster or a special effect. It's emotion. Will's journey, woven carefully between moments of terror, becomes an intimate portrayal of someone learning to exist without hiding. The Duffers refuse to rush his story or use it as cheap shock value. Instead, they craft it as the season's quiet miracle. His transformation isn't loud, but it radiates meaning through every glance, every hesitation, every burst of honesty. By returning to the trauma from season 1 and pushing him beyond it, the show gives Will the role he was always meant to have, not a symbol of fear, but a symbol of resilience. It's the final reminder that Stranger Things was never only about monsters. It was always about what it takes to face them. As the screen fades into its final moments, Stranger Things doesn't ask us to cheer. It asks us to remember not just the monsters defeated or the villains unmasked, but the childhood friendships that carried this story, from bike rides and comic books to bullets and flames. This last season closes with a roar, a laugh, and something unexpectedly tender. It invites its audience to let go, the same way its characters finally do. The boombox goes silent. The catapults are set aside, and the magic that once belonged to kids is passed to adults who finally understand who they are. Stranger Things doesn't end because it's out of ideas. It ends because the adventure did its job. It grew up, and by growing up, it earned its goodbye.